Zachary Foster never imagined she would be standing in the marble lobby of the Whitmore building at 9 in the morning, clutching her worn portfolio and wondering if her deodorant was still working. The receptionist, a sleek woman with perfectly manicured nails, barely glanced up as she spoke into her headset. "Mr. Yates will see you now. 42nd floor, suite 4200. Zachary's stomach flipped. This was it. The opportunity that could save her fledgling wedding planning business from complete collapse. 3 months behind on rent for her tiny office space, maxed out credit cards, and exactly 2 weddings booked for the entire year. When Yates Young had called her agency personally, requesting a meeting to discuss planning his wedding, she'd nearly dropped her phone into her coffee. Yates Young. The name alone commanded attention. At 29, he'd built an empire in commercial real estate development, transforming forgotten neighborhoods into thriving communities. Forbes had featured him twice. His estimated net worth hovered around $80 million, though some speculated it was much higher. The elevator ride felt eternal. Zachary smoothed down her navy dress, the nicest thing in her closet that didn't have a visible stain or missing button. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a woman who looked far more composed than she felt. Dark hair pulled back in a professional bun, minimal makeup, sensible heels that were already pinching her toes. The doors opened to reveal a reception area that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. "Miss Foster," a young man in an expensive suit approached. "Right this way." She followed him down a hallway lined with architectural renderings and awards until they reached a massive door. He knocked once, then opened it. "Mr. Yates, Miss Foster is here." Zachary stepped inside and her breath caught. Yates Young stood by the windows, his back to her. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. When he turned, she had to remind herself to maintain professional eye contact. He was devastatingly handsome. Strong jaw, dark hair slightly tousled like he'd been running his hands through it, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed almost unreal. But there was something in his expression that surprised her, tension, maybe even unhappiness. "Miss Foster." His voice was deep, controlled. "Thank you for coming on short notice." "Of course. I'm honored you considered my company." She hoped he couldn't hear the slight tremor in her voice. "Please sit." He gestured to the chairs arranged around a glass conference table. As they settled into their seats, Yates pulled out a folder. "I'll be direct. I need a wedding planner. The wedding is scheduled for 6 months from now, late July. My fiancée had been handling most of the arrangements herself, but her career has become demanding and she's asked me to take over. I don't have time for this." Zachary pulled out her notebook, pen ready. "I understand. Tell me about your vision for the wedding." Something flickered across his face. "My fiancée, Victoria, wants something grand, elegant, at least 300 guests. She's mentioned the Rosewood Estate as a potential venue." The Rosewood Estate. One of the most exclusive wedding venues in the state, with a price tag that matched its reputation. "That's a beautiful location," Zachary said carefully. "Have you visited it together?" "Not yet." Yates leaned back in his chair. "Victoria travels extensively for work. She's a corporate lawyer, specializing in international mergers. She's actually in Singapore right now." Zachary made notes, though something felt off. She'd planned enough weddings to recognize when a groom was excited about marrying his partner. Yates Young sounded like he was discussing a business transaction. "What drew you to each other?" she asked. It was a question she always posed to couples, helping her understand their story so she could weave it into their celebration. Yates seemed caught off guard. We've known each other since college. Our families have been friends for years. It made sense. Made sense. Not fell in love, not couldn't imagine life without each other. Made sense. Mr. Yates, just Yates, please. Yates, she continued. I need to understand what makes your relationship special. The little moments, the inside jokes, the reasons you chose each other. That's what transforms a wedding from just a pretty party into something meaningful. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. You actually care about that? Of course I do. I'm not in this business to just arrange flowers and pick out napkin colors, though I'm excellent at both. She offered a small smile. I'm here to help you celebrate one of the most important days of your life. Yates was quiet for a moment. Victoria and I understand each other. We want similar things: stability, success, a partnership that makes sense for both our futures. There it was again, that word, sense. Okay, Zachary said slowly. Then let's create a wedding that reflects that partnership. Tell me about Victoria. What does she love? For the next hour they discussed details. Victoria preferred classical music. She wanted white roses, no other flowers. She'd already chosen her dress from a designer in Paris. The guest list was mostly business associates and family friends. Everything Yates described felt formal, distant, like planning a corporate gala rather than a wedding. But Zachary took diligent notes, asked clarifying questions, and began forming a vision. If this was what they wanted, she'd deliver it flawlessly. I'll need to meet with Victoria, Zachary said finally, to ensure I'm capturing her vision correctly. She'll be back in town next month. Briefly. Yates pulled out his phone, scrolling through his calendar. She can spare an hour on the 15th, an hour, for planning her own wedding. Zachary kept her expression neutral. That works. In the meantime, I'll scout the Rosewood estate, meet with potential caterers and florists, and put together some initial proposals. We should also discuss your budget. Whatever it costs. Yates waved a hand dismissively. Victoria wants it to be perfect. Money isn't a concern. Most brides would kill to hear those words. Yet something about this entire situation made Zachary's chest tighten. I'll send over my contract and get started immediately, she said, standing and extending her hand. Yates stood as well, and when his hand closed around hers, warm and firm, she felt an unexpected jolt of electricity. From the slight widening of his eyes, she wondered if he'd felt it too. Thank you, Zachary. He released her hand. I have a feeling you're exactly what this wedding needs. She left his office with a signed contract, a substantial deposit that would save her business, and a nagging feeling that she'd just agreed to plan the saddest wedding she'd ever seen. Over the next 2 weeks, Zachary threw herself into work with an intensity that surprised even her. She visited the Rosewood estate 3 times, walking the grounds at different times of day to understand the lighting. She met with 7 different caterers, sampled countless dishes, and negotiated pricing. She interviewed florists, photographers, musicians, and designers. She created mood boards, timeline spreadsheets, and budget breakdowns. Everything was meticulously organized in a leather-bound presentation folder that she'd splurged on despite her financial situation. Yates had asked for updates via email, but Zachary preferred face-to-face meetings when possible. There were nuances to planning a wedding that got lost in written communication. So when she had enough material to review, she called his office to schedule another appointment. To her surprise, he suggested meeting at a coffee shop near her office instead. I spend enough time in conference rooms, he'd said over the phone. Besides, I could use the fresh air. She arrived at the small cafe 15 minutes early, ordering a latte and claiming a corner table. When Yates walked through the door, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater instead of a suit, she barely recognized him. He looked younger, more relaxed. Several women in the cafe turned to stare, and Zachary felt an unwelcome twist of something that felt suspiciously like jealousy. "Thanks for being flexible," he said, sitting across from her. "I've been in back-to-back meetings since 6 this morning." "You look exhausted," she said before she could stop herself. He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "That's one way of putting it." "My assistant said I looked like death warmed over." I was trying to be polite. Zachary opened her presentation folder. "But before we dive into wedding details, have you eaten? You need fuel if we're going to make important decisions." Yates blinked, like no one had asked him that in a while. "No, actually." "Then we're ordering food." She waved over a server and ordered them both sandwiches without asking what he wanted. "Trust me, the turkey club here is incredible." When the server left, Yates was staring at her with an amused expression. "You're very direct." "I've learned that wedding planning requires someone to make decisions and keep things moving. Otherwise, you'll spend 6 hours debating napkin folds." She pulled out her carefully organized materials. "Now, let's talk about your wedding." They spent the next 2 hours reviewing every detail. Yates proved to be surprisingly engaged, asking thoughtful questions and providing feedback. When Zachary showed him the photos from the Rosewood estate, she watched his face carefully. "It's impressive," he said. "But," she'd heard the hesitation, "it's very formal, very traditional." "That's what Victoria wanted, according to your initial description." Yates rubbed his jaw, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as something he did when thinking. "You're right. It's perfect." But he didn't look like it was perfect. He looked like a man checking items off a list. "Yates," Zachary said carefully, "this is your wedding too. What do you want?" The question seemed to startle him. "I want Victoria to be happy." "That's sweet. But what would make you happy?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I've never really thought about it. Victoria has specific tastes, and frankly, I don't care about most of this stuff. Flowers are flowers. Food is food." "That's where you're wrong." Zachary leaned forward. "Flowers tell a story. Food creates memories. Every single choice you make is an opportunity to celebrate who you are as a couple. If you're just going through the motions, your guests will feel it." Yates met her eyes, and the intensity of his gaze made her pulse quicken. "You really believe that?" "I wouldn't be in this business if I didn't." Something passed between them, an understanding that felt too intimate for a professional relationship. Zachary quickly looked down at her notes, clearing her throat. "The Rosewood estate has an opening for a site visit next Thursday at 2. I think you and Victoria should see it together before we commit. Victoria won't be back until the 15th. Just book it. If you think it's right, that's good enough for me." "Yates, I trust you, Zachary." His voice was quiet but firm. "In the past 2 weeks, you've put more thought into this wedding than I have in 6 months. Whatever you decide, I know it'll be beautiful." The weight of that trust settled on her shoulders. She wasn't just planning a wedding anymore. She was trying to create something meaningful for 2 people who seemed to be sleepwalking into marriage. They parted ways as the sun began setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As Zachary walked back to her office, she couldn't shake the image of Yates sitting alone in that cafe, looking at wedding plans with resigned acceptance rather than joy. The following Thursday, Zachary arrived at the Rosewood estate alone. The coordinator, a woman named Margaret with silver hair and a warm smile, gave her a complete tour. The main building was a restored 19th-century mansion with soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers. The gardens were immaculate, with stone pathways winding between rose bushes and flowering trees. "It's perfect for a summer wedding," Margaret said. "We can accommodate up to 500 guests between the indoor and outdoor spaces." Zachary took photos, made notes, and tried to imagine Yates standing at the altar waiting for his bride. But the image wouldn't solidify in her mind. Something felt wrong. She was standing in the garden, staring at the fountain that would make a beautiful backdrop for photos, when her phone rang. "Yates, hey," he said. "How's the estate?" "Stunning. Margaret is emailing you the full proposal, but I think we should book it now. Places like this fill up fast. Consider it done." She heard keyboard clicking in the background. "I'm sending the deposit now." "Yates, are you sure you don't want to see it first?" "I'm sure." A pause. "Are you still there at the estate?" "Yes, finishing up with Margaret." "Stay there. I'm coming." Before she could respond, he'd hung up. 20 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled into the circular driveway. Yates emerged, still wearing his work clothes but with his tie loosened and top button undone. He looked around, taking in the manicured grounds and elegant architecture. "You were right," he said, walking over to where Zachary stood. "It's impressive." Margaret appeared, greeting Yates with professional enthusiasm and offering another tour. As they walked through the spaces, Zachary watched him carefully. He asked good questions, nodded at appropriate times, but that spark of genuine excitement never appeared. When Margaret excused herself to take a phone call, Yates and Zachary were left alone in the garden. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the stone pathway. "Be honest with me," Yates said suddenly. "Do you think Victoria will love this?" "Based on everything you've told me about her tastes, yes. It checks every box." "Boxes," he laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's exactly what this feels like, checking boxes." Zachary chose her words carefully. "Cold feet are normal. Planning a wedding is stressful even with help." "It's not cold feet." Yates walked over to a stone bench and sat down heavily. "I'm sorry. This is inappropriate. You're my wedding planner, not my therapist. I'm also a pretty good listener." Zachary sat beside him, maintaining a professional distance. "And I've learned that sometimes the process of planning a wedding brings up bigger questions. That's okay." Yates was quiet for a moment. "Victoria and I got engaged because it was the next logical step. We'd been dating for 3 years. Our families expected it. Our friends expected it. Hell, I expected it." He ran a hand through his hair. "But lately, I can't shake the feeling that we're building a life based on logic rather than love." The honesty in his words hit Zachary hard. "Have you talked to Victoria about this?" "How do you tell your fiancée that you're not sure you're in love with her? Especially when she's a good person who's done nothing wrong." His voice was raw. "Victoria deserves someone who's absolutely certain, who looks at wedding venues and can't wait to marry her. And I keep thinking that maybe I'm just broken somehow, that I don't feel things the way other people do." "You're not broken," Zachary said firmly. "And the fact that you're questioning this shows you care about doing right by Victoria. But Yates, you can't marry someone out of obligation." "I gave her a ring. We've told everyone. We've started planning this massive wedding." He gestured around them. "How do I walk away from that? The same way you'd walk away from any business deal that doesn't serve you, with honesty and respect." Zachary turned to face him fully. "I know it seems impossible right now, but staying in something that isn't right helps no one. Not you, and definitely not Victoria." Yates looked at her, really looked at her, and Zachary felt that electric charge again. Something unspoken hung in the air between them. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being honest." "That's what you're paying me for," she tried to joke, but her voice came out softer than intended. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the gentle splashing of the fountain. Zachary knew she should leave, should maintain professional boundaries, but something kept her rooted to that bench beside him. Finally, Yates stood. "I should get back to the office." "But Zachary, I meant what I said. I trust you. Whatever happens, thank you for caring enough to tell me the truth." He left, and Zachary remained in the garden until the sun began to set, wondering what she'd just done. Had she helped a client see the truth, or had she planted seeds of doubt in a relationship that might have worked? The 15th arrived, bringing with it the meeting with Victoria. Zachary had prepared extensively, printing out proposals and creating visual presentations to make the most of their limited time together. Victoria Martinez was exactly what Zachary had expected. Stunning, polished, with dark hair cut in a sleek bob and a designer suit that probably cost more than Zachary's car. She arrived precisely on time, shook Zachary's hand with a firm grip, and immediately pulled out her phone. "I have until 3:30, Victoria said, sitting across from Zachary in the conference room Yates had reserved for them. "Walk me through everything." For the next 45 minutes, Zachary presented her carefully crafted plans. Victoria listened, occasionally nodding, but her attention kept drifting to her phone. When it rang for the third time, she answered it. "I need to take this. Give me 5 minutes." Victoria stepped into the hallway, and Zachary heard her speaking rapid Spanish, her tone sharp and professional. When she returned, she looked apologetic but distracted. "I'm sorry. Crisis in Tokyo. Where were we?" "The floral arrangements," Zachary said patiently. "I've proposed white roses with touches of eucalyptus for whatever you and Yates decided is fine. He said you have excellent taste." Victoria glanced at her watch. "Look, I'll be direct. I don't have the bandwidth for this right now. We're in the middle of the biggest merger my firm has ever handled. It's going to make or break my partnership track. So if you're asking for my approval, you have it. Just make it elegant and memorable." "Victoria, this is your wedding. I need to know what you want." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "I want to marry Yates. The rest is just window dressing. Pretty, expensive window dressing, but still just dressing." She started gathering her things. "My mother will have opinions, I'm sure. Copy her on all the emails. She'll be thrilled to be involved." "Wait," Zachary said. "Can I ask you something personal?" Victoria paused. "You can ask. I might not answer. Do you love him?" For the first time since entering the room, Victoria's polished exterior cracked. She sank back into her chair. "That's quite a question. I've learned that if I'm going to plan a wedding that feels authentic, I need to understand the relationship." "Yates is one of the best men I've ever known," Victoria said carefully. "He's brilliant, kind, and we work well together. We want the same things from life." "That's not what I asked." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I care about him deeply. I respect him. I enjoy his company." "Isn't that enough?" "Is it enough for you?" Victoria's phone rang again. She looked at it, then at Zachary, and something like relief crossed her face. "I really need to take this. Send me the final proposals. If Yates approves them, so do I." She answered the phone as she walked out, leaving Zachary alone in the conference room with an uneasy feeling growing in her chest. That evening, Zachary was working late in her small office when there was a knock on the door. She looked up, surprised to see Yates standing there with takeout bags. "I took a chance you'd still be here," he said. "Figured you might not have eaten." "How did you know where my office was?" "It's on your business card." He held up the bags. "Thai food. I got a variety since I don't know what you like." She should send him away. This was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But she was hungry and exhausted, and his presence felt like a lifeline she hadn't known she needed. "Come in," she said. Her office was tiny, barely large enough for her desk, a filing cabinet and 2 chairs. Yates looked around, taking in the vision boards covering the walls, the stacks of vendor catalogs, the single dying plant on the windowsill. "It's not much," Zachary said defensively. "It's perfect. It's actually yours." He started unpacking containers. I spent 3 hours in a boardroom today, listening to people argue about parking structures. This is much better. They ate together, sharing pad thai and green curry, and talked about everything except the wedding. Yates told her about growing up with two older sisters who'd made his childhood both chaotic and wonderful. Zachary shared stories about her parents, who'd been married for 35 years and still held hands during movies. "That's what I want," Yates said quietly. "What your parents have. That certainty, that partnership that goes beyond logic." "It's possible," Zachary said, "but you have to be with the right person." Their eyes met across her cluttered desk, and the air between them felt charged. Yates reached across and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear that had escaped her bun. The gesture was tender, intimate, and completely inappropriate. "I should go," he said, but neither of them moved. "Yates, I know, this is complicated. You're planning my wedding, I'm engaged." "None of this is fair to you. Or to Victoria," Zachary added softly. "Or to Victoria," he agreed. He stood collecting the empty containers. "I talked to her last night. We had a long conversation about what we both really want." Zachary's heart hammered. And we're still figuring it out. But I think we both know this engagement happened for the wrong reasons." He paused at the door. "I'm not asking you to wait for me or anything like that. I just needed you to know that what I'm feeling isn't something I take lightly. And regardless of what happens with Victoria, meeting you has shown me what I've been missing." He left before she could respond, leaving her sitting in her tiny office with her heart racing and her mind spinning. Over the next month, things shifted. Yates called Victoria back from Singapore, insisting they needed to have serious conversations that couldn't happen over video calls. To everyone's surprise, Victoria agreed. Zachary continued planning the wedding, even as she suspected it might never happen. She met with caterers, confirmed bookings, designed invitations. It felt surreal, creating this elaborate celebration while watching the couple slowly unravel. Yates and Victoria met several times, long dinners where they talked honestly about their relationship. And slowly, with the kind of mutual respect that had always characterized their partnership, they came to an agreement. They weren't in love. They cared about each other deeply, but neither could honestly say they couldn't live without the other. The engagement had been about meeting expectations, about taking the path that seemed sensible rather than the one that felt right. Victoria called Zachary personally to deliver the news. "We're ending the engagement," she said, her voice clear and surprisingly relieved. "I need to focus on my career, and Yates deserves someone who makes him a priority. We both do." "I'm sorry," Zachary said, meaning it. "Don't be. Honestly, I feel like I can breathe again." Victoria laughed softly. "My mother is devastated and will lose some deposits, but I'd rather lose money than waste years of my life in something that isn't right. You helped us see that, so thank you." After hanging up, Zachary sat in her office, unsure what to feel, relief that they'd been honest with themselves. Sadness that her biggest contract had evaporated. Guilt that maybe her growing feelings for Yates had influenced her advice. She didn't hear from Yates for 3 weeks. 3 long weeks where she threw herself into her 2 other weddings, both small affairs that kept her busy but couldn't keep her mind from wandering. Then, on a Tuesday evening, he showed up at her office again. This time without food, without excuses. Just standing in her doorway looking vulnerable and hopeful. "I'm not engaged anymore," he said. "I heard. Victoria and I are still friends. We want the best for each other, just not as spouses." "That's good, Yates. I'm glad you both found clarity." He stepped into her office. "I've thought about you every day for 2 months. The way you listen, really listen. The way you care about making things meaningful. The way you called me out when I was settling for something less than I deserved. Yates, let me finish. He moved closer. I know this started in the worst possible way. I was your client, I was engaged, and everything was complicated. But I'm not engaged anymore, and I'm not your client. I'm just a guy who can't stop thinking about the woman who saw through all my bullshit and made me want to be honest. Zachary's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'd like to take you to dinner. A real dinner, not a wedding planning meeting. I want to know everything about you. What makes you laugh, what you dream about, what you do when you're not saving clueless millionaires from terrible life decisions. She should be cautious. She should protect herself. But looking at Yates, seeing the genuine emotion in his eyes, she couldn't deny what she'd been feeling. Okay, she said softly. Okay? Yes, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. The smile that spread across his face was worth every complicated moment that had led them here. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a neighborhood far from the business district. Yates had made reservations under a fake name, wanting privacy away from people who might recognize him. Zachary wore a simple green dress that she'd bought specifically for this occasion, splurging on something that made her feel beautiful rather than just professional. When Yates arrived to pick her up, the look in his eyes told her it was worth every penny. You look incredible, he said. You clean up pretty well yourself. Over pasta and wine, they talked for hours. Yates told her about his father, who died when he was 22, leaving him a struggling real estate company and a mountain of debt. How he'd worked 20-hour days for 3 years, learning everything he could, taking risks that either would have made him successful or destroyed him completely. I got lucky, he said. My first major development project was in an area everyone said was too risky, but I saw potential. It paid off, and suddenly I had capital to invest in bigger projects. That's not luck, Zachary said. That's vision and hard work. Maybe. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to actually live. I worked constantly, built my company, networked with the right people. Dating Victoria felt like another box to check. Find an appropriate partner, get married, have the 2.5 kids. He reached across the table and took her hand. And then you walked into my office with your determination and your honesty, and I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my life. Zachary's heart swelled. I wasn't exactly in a great place either. My business was failing. I was so stressed about money that I couldn't sleep. Landing your wedding felt like my last chance. And instead, you told me the truth even though it cost you the contract. That takes courage or stupidity. No, he said firmly, courage. They left the restaurant and walked through the city streets, hands linked, talking about everything and nothing. When Yates walked her to her apartment door, the air between them hummed with possibility. I'd really like to kiss you, he said. I'd really like that too. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek, and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, then deepened into something that made Zachary's knees weak. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. Wow, she whispered. Yeah, he agreed. Wow. Over the following months, they fell into a relationship that felt both thrilling and comfortable. Yates would show up at her office with coffee and pastries, stealing kisses between her client meetings. Zachary would visit his construction sites, wearing a hard hat and listening to him explain his vision for transforming empty lots into community spaces. They went to movies, cooked dinner together in his massive kitchen, and spent lazy Sunday mornings reading the newspaper in bed. Yates introduced her to his sisters, Yvonne and Yasmin, who welcomed her with warm hugs and embarrassing childhood stories. He's different with you, Yvonne told Zachary during a girls' lunch. Lighter, happier. We were worried about him marrying Victoria, but neither of us knew how to say it. Why not? Zachary asked. Because Yates is stubborn. Once he decides on something, he commits completely, even if it's wrong for him. Yasmin smiled. But you helped him see the truth. We're grateful for that. Zachary's business began to thrive again. Word spread about the wedding planner who cared more about authentic celebrations than just expensive displays. Clients came to her wanting meaningful ceremonies, intimate gatherings, and celebrations that reflected who they really were. Yates supported her completely, never trying to use his connections to push clients her way, but always celebrating her successes. When she landed a particularly prestigious wedding, he took her to dinner at the nicest restaurant in the city and toasted her success. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his eyes shining. "I couldn't have done this without you believing in me. I'm just returning the favor." 6 months into their relationship, Yates invited Zachary to spend a weekend at his family's lake house. It was late fall, the trees brilliant with autumn colors, and the air crisp with the promise of coming winter. They arrived Friday evening, and Zachary fell in love with the place immediately. It was cozy and warm, filled with comfortable furniture and family photos. Nothing like the sleek modern aesthetic of Yates's city apartment. "My parents bought this place when I was 10, Yates said, building a fire in the stone fireplace. "We spent every summer here. After my dad died, my mom couldn't bear to come back. My sisters and I kept it, though. It felt wrong to let it go." That night, they sat by the fire wrapped in blankets, drinking hot chocolate and talking about their futures. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Yates asked. Zachary considered. "I'd love to have expanded my business. Maybe hired a small team so I'm not doing everything myself. But still maintaining that personal touch, never becoming so big that I forget why I started. You'll do it, I have no doubt. What about you? Honestly, I've been thinking about shifting focus. I've built the company to a point where it basically runs itself. I have good people in place. I'd like to start a foundation, using some of my resources to fund community development projects in underserved areas. Actually make a difference beyond just profit margins." "That sounds amazing." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I'd also like to share my life with someone, really share it. Build something meaningful with a partner who challenges me and supports me and makes me laugh." "Yates, I love you, Zachary." His voice was steady, certain. "I've been in love with you for months, but I wanted to be sure. I wanted to give us time to build something real, away from all the complicated circumstances of how we met. But I can't wait any longer to tell you. You're everything I never knew I needed." Tears filled Zachary's eyes. "I love you too, so much that sometimes it scares me." "Don't be scared." He pulled her close. "I'm not going anywhere." They made love that night with the fire crackling beside them, slow and tender and full of promises neither of them spoke but both understood. The next morning, Zachary woke to find Yates already awake, watching her with an expression that made her heart flutter. "Morning," she mumbled, still half asleep. "Morning, beautiful." He kissed her forehead. "Stay here. I'll make breakfast." She dozed while listening to him move around the kitchen, the sounds of coffee brewing and pans clattering. When he called her down, she found the table set with pancakes, bacon, and fresh fruit. "When did you become a chef?" she asked. "I have hidden talents." They spent the weekend hiking around the lake, cooking meals together and simply enjoying each other's company. No work stress, no outside obligations. Just them. On Sunday afternoon, as they were packing to leave, Yates grew quiet. Zachary noticed him fidgeting, which was unlike him. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Actually, there's something I want to show you." He led her down to the dock that stretched out over the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the blue sky and colorful trees. It was breathtakingly beautiful. "My dad proposed to my mom on this dock," Yates said. 35 years ago. She tells the story every chance she gets, how nervous he was, how he almost dropped the ring in the water. Zachary's heart began to race. I know it's only been 6 months, Yates continued. And after everything with Victoria, I swore I'd take my time, be absolutely certain before making any major commitments. Yates. But here's the thing. I am certain. More certain than I've ever been about anything. You're not the safe choice or the logical choice. You're the only choice. The one person who makes me want to be better, do better, live better. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Zachary gasped. The ring was stunning, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unique and unexpected. I know you probably expected a diamond, Yates said, but this reminded me of you. Different, beautiful, and absolutely perfect. Tears streamed down Zachary's face. It's incredible. Zachary Foster, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me? Yes, she said, laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her while the lake sparkled around them, and the autumn sun warmed their faces. Planning their own wedding was a completely different experience than planning for clients. Zachary found herself overthinking every detail, wanting everything to be perfect. Yates finally sat her down and made her talk through what they actually wanted. Forget what's trendy or expected, he said. What do you want? Really want? After much discussion, they decided on something intimate and meaningful. 50 guests, all close friends and family. The ceremony would be at the lake house, on that same dock where Yates had proposed. A late spring wedding when the trees would be blooming and the weather would be perfect. No wedding planner, Yates insisted. We're doing this ourselves, together. Zachary's mother helped with arrangements, thrilled to finally plan her daughter's wedding. Yates's sisters handled the flowers and decorations. They hired a small catering company run by a couple they'd befriended. Everything felt personal, chosen with care. The night before the wedding, following tradition, they stayed apart. Zachary spent it at her parents' house, surrounded by her mother and childhood friends. They painted nails, drank champagne, and shared stories. I'm so happy for you, honey, her mother said, hugging her tightly. Yates is a good man. I can see how much he loves you. I'm so lucky, Mom. No, you're both lucky. You found each other. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. Zachary got ready surrounded by her bridesmaids, wearing a simple ivory dress that flowed like water and made her feel like a princess. Her hair was swept up loosely, with small flowers tucked into the curls. When her father saw her, he got tears in his eyes. You look just like your mother did on our wedding day. Don't make me cry, Zachary warned. I just finished my makeup. Too late for me, he said, wiping his eyes. Come on, sweetheart, let's get you married. The ceremony was set for 5 in the evening, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Guests gathered around the dock, which had been decorated with white flowers and flowing fabric that caught the breeze. When the music started and Zachary stepped into view on her father's arm, she only had eyes for Yates. He stood at the end of the dock, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. The walk felt both eternal and instant. When her father placed her hand in Yates's, she felt a sense of rightness that went beyond words. Hi, Yates whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Hi, she whispered back. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They'd written their own vows, promises that came from the deepest parts of their hearts. Zachary, Yates said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes, you walked into my life when I was lost and you helped me find my way. Not to you specifically, though that's been the greatest gift. You helped me find myself. Find honesty and courage and the strength to choose love over logic. I promise to spend every day earning the trust you've placed in me, to support your dreams, celebrate your successes, and hold you through the hard times. To laugh with you, grow with you, and build a life that makes both of us deliriously happy. I love you, and I can't wait to spend forever proving it. Zachary was crying openly now, but she smiled through the tears. Yates, you showed me what real partnership looks like. Not just in grand gestures, but in showing up, being present, and choosing each other every single day. You believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. You pushed me to be better while loving me exactly as I am. I promise to be your partner in all things. To challenge you when you need it and support you always. To build a life with you that's messy and real and full of love. You're my best friend, my love, and my home. When they exchanged rings and the officiant pronounced them married, Yates pulled Zachary into his arms and kissed her deeply while their friends and family cheered. The sun painted the sky in brilliant pinks and oranges, and everything felt magical. The reception was held in the yard of the lake house, under strings of lights that twinkled as darkness fell. They ate, danced, and celebrated with the people they loved most. Yates's mother gave a tearful speech about how proud his father would have been. Zachary's father told embarrassing childhood stories that made everyone laugh. But the best moment came late in the evening, when Yates pulled Zachary onto the dock for a private moment away from the party. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Yates?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Like the luckiest woman alive." "Funny, I was thinking the same thing." "Well, luckiest man." They swayed together to the distant music, the lake rippling softly around them, the stars beginning to appear overhead. "Thank you," Zachary said softly. "For what? For seeing me. For choosing me. For being patient enough to let us do this right. Always," Yates promised. "For the rest of our lives." 2 years later, Zachary sat in the nursery of their new house, rocking their 6-month-old daughter, Lily. The house was located between the city and the lake, giving them the best of both worlds. It was filled with light and love, and the beautiful chaos of family life. Yates appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame and watching them with that expression that still made Zachary's heart skip. "Is she asleep?" he whispered, finally. "She fought it hard tonight. She gets that from you, stubborn." "Excuse me, she gets it from both of us." He laughed softly and came to sit beside them. Lily dozed peacefully, her tiny hand curled against Zachary's chest. They'd struggled for a year to get pregnant, and Lily's arrival had felt like a miracle. "I've been thinking," Yates said quietly. "Dangerous. The foundation is doing well. We've funded 12 projects this year, but I want to do more. I want to start a scholarship program. For kids who want to go into creative fields but can't afford it. Design, arts, event planning. Things that people sometimes dismiss as not practical. That's a beautiful idea. I was thinking we could call it the Foster Foundation, in honor of the wedding planner who changed my life." Zachary looked at him through tears. "You don't have to do that. I want to. You showed me that following your passion matters, that creating beauty and meaning in the world is valuable. I want to help other people pursue those dreams. Then let's do it together. The Foster Yates Foundation." "A partnership. Always a partnership," he agreed, kissing her softly so as not to wake Lily. Zachary's business had grown beyond her wildest dreams. She'd hired 3 other planners and moved into a real office space with actual rooms instead of just her tiny closet. But she still insisted on being personally involved in every wedding, remembering what it felt like when she was struggling and needed someone to believe in her. Yates had stepped back from day-to-day operations of his company, focusing instead on the foundation and spending time with his family. He coached a youth basketball team and volunteered at a community center. Success, he discovered, wasn't about how much money you made but about how much good you did. They put Lily in her crib and retreated to their bedroom. It had been a long day, full of the beautiful exhaustion that came with parenting. "You ever think about that first meeting?" Zachary asked as they got ready for bed. "When I walked into your office to plan your wedding to someone else, all the time." Yates pulled her close. "I think about how miserable I was, how lost. And then you appeared, all determined and honest, and everything changed. I was so nervous. I needed that contract desperately. And then I spent the whole time trying to figure out why you seemed so sad about getting married. Because I knew deep down that it was wrong. I just needed someone brave enough to help me admit it." He kissed her forehead. "Best decision I ever made, ending that engagement." "Second best," Zachary corrected. "The best was asking me out." "Fair point." They climbed into bed, exhausted but content. Lily would probably wake them up in a few hours, but for now they had this moment of peace. "I love you," Yates murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too," Zachary replied, snuggling closer. Outside, the moon shone bright over the lake in the distance. Inside, a family slept peacefully, having found their way to each other through honesty, courage, and the willingness to choose love over logic. 5 years after their wedding, Zachary and Yates celebrated their anniversary at the lake house, a tradition they'd maintained every year. Lily was now a rambunctious 5-year-old who loved the water and had no fear whatsoever, keeping them constantly on their toes. "Mama, watch me," Lily called, preparing to jump off the dock into Yates's waiting arms. "I'm watching, baby. Be careful." Lily jumped, shrieking with laughter as Yates caught her and spun her around in the water. Watching them together made Zachary's heart overflow. Yates was an incredible father, patient and playful and completely devoted. That evening, after Lily was asleep upstairs, Zachary and Yates sat on the dock with a bottle of wine, watching the stars reflect on the water. 5 years, Yates said. "Feels like yesterday and forever at the same time." "I know what you mean. I have something for you." He pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What is this?" "Open it." It was a deed to a property in the city, a beautiful old building that Zachary had admired for years. "Yates, this is yours if you want it. I thought it would make a perfect headquarters for your business. Big enough to expand, but still intimate enough to maintain your personal touch." Zachary was speechless. The building was perfect, exactly what she'd dreamed of but never thought she could afford. "I can't accept this," she finally said. "Why not? It's too much. It's an investment in your dream, and honestly, I got a great deal on it. The owner owed me a favor." He smiled. "Plus, watching you succeed makes me happier than anything else. Except maybe watching Lily try to convince me that ice cream counts as a vegetable." Zachary laughed through tears. "Thank you for everything. For believing in me, for supporting me, for being the most amazing partner I could imagine." "Right back at you." He clinked his wine glass against hers. "Here's to 5 years and 50 more. 50 more," she echoed. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new challenges and joys. When Lily was 7, they welcomed twin boys, Ryan and Riley, who turned their house into beautiful chaos. Zachary cut back on her work hours, wanting to be present for her children, but she never stopped doing what she loved. Yates supported every decision, often working from home so he could help with school pickups and soccer practice. The Foster Yates Foundation flourished, funding hundreds of scholarships and community projects. They were making a real difference, and it filled both of them with purpose beyond anything they'd imagined. Zachary's business, now called Foster Events, had become one of the most sought-after wedding planning companies in the state. But she'd maintained her original vision of creating meaningful, authentic celebrations. She'd trained her team to ask the hard questions, to ensure couples were getting married for the right reasons. "I can't plan a wedding for someone who's settling," she'd tell her planners. "Our job is to celebrate love, not just throw expensive parties." On their 10th anniversary, Yates arranged for his sisters to watch the kids so he and Zachary could spend a long weekend at the lake house, just the two of them. "Remember when this place felt too quiet?" Zachary said, lounging on the dock in the warm summer sun. "Now the silence feels like a luxury." "I love the chaos, though," Yates said, lying beside her. "Every loud moment, every mess, every time I step on a toy at 3 in the morning. You're insane, maybe, but it's the life we built together." That night, as they sat by the fire, Yates pulled out a letter. "What's this?" Zachary asked. "Read it." The letter was dated 10 years earlier, written the day after their first official date. In it, Yates had poured out his feelings, his hopes, his certainty that Zachary was the one. He'd written about wanting to marry her, have children with her, build a life that mattered. "I found it the other day going through old files," Yates explained. "I'd forgotten about it, but reading it now, everything came true. Every single thing I hoped for." Zachary was crying. "This is the most romantic thing anyone's ever done. You've made every dream come true, even ones I didn't know I had." They made love that night with the same passion and tenderness they'd always shared, their connection deepening with each passing year rather than fading. The next morning, as they packed to go home, Yates pulled Zachary aside. "I want to do something," he said. "Something big. Okay, I want to sell the company, not the foundation but the real estate business. I've got offers, good ones, we'd be set for multiple generations. And I want to spend more time with you and the kids. I don't want to miss anything." Zachary studied his face. "Are you sure? That company is your legacy." "No, our family is my legacy. The foundation is my legacy. The company is just money." He took her hands. "I've built everything I wanted to build in that world. Now I want to focus on what really matters." "Then do it," she said simply. "I'll support whatever you decide." Just like that, just like that. "We're partners, remember, I trust you." He kissed her deeply, grateful for the woman who taught him that success wasn't measured in dollars, but in the life you built. 15 years into their marriage, Zachary and Yates attended a wedding she'd planned. The bride was a young woman who'd received one of their foundation scholarships and had gone on to become a successful graphic designer. She'd insisted that Zachary plan her wedding as thanks. The ceremony was beautiful and personal, full of touches that reflected the couple's unique story. As Zachary watched them exchange vows, she felt Yates's arm slip around her waist. "Remember our wedding," he whispered. "Every detail. Best day of my life. Until Lily was born, and then the twins. You can't pick a best day, they're all best days, true. But if I had to rank them, marrying you is pretty high on the list." After the reception, as they drove home, they talked about their own children. Lily was now 15, already showing signs of following in her father's entrepreneurial footsteps. The twins were 8, constantly competing but deeply bonded. "Can you believe we created 3 entire humans?" Zachary mused. "Sometimes I still can't believe I convinced you to marry me." "You didn't convince me, I chose you. Big difference. Best choice you ever made." "Definitely top 3, she teased. "Top 3? What are the other 2, wearing that green dress on our first date, and saying yes when you showed up at my office with Thai food?" "So basically, all roads lead back to me, pretty much." They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who knew each other completely and loved what they knew. When Lily turned 18 and prepared to leave for college, studying business with a minor in social entrepreneurship, Zachary and Yates threw her a going-away party at the lake house. Friends and family gathered to celebrate, sharing advice and memories. Late in the evening, Lily found her parents sitting on the dock, watching the sunset. "Can I tell you guys something?" she asked, sitting between them. "Always," Yates said. "I used to think every family was like ours. Happy, supportive, full of love. But as I got older, I realized how rare that is, how lucky I am." She looked at both of them. "You guys taught me what love should look like, how partners should treat each other, and I promise I won't settle for anything less." Zachary was crying, as she often did during emotional moments. "That's all we ever wanted, for you to know what you deserve. Also, just so you know, I'm planning to stay single until I'm at least 30, Lily added with a grin. "You guys have set the bar impossibly high." Yates laughed. "No pressure, but we'd love some grandkids eventually. Dad, I'm just saying." They watched Lily run back to join her friends, and Zachary leaned her head on Yates's shoulder. "We did good," she said. "We did great." 20 years into their marriage, Zachary and Yates renewed their vows at the lake house. It was a small ceremony, just family and their closest friends, but it was perfect. They stood on that same dock, older and grayer but more in love than ever. 20 years ago, I promised to love you for the rest of my life," Yates said. "Today, I renew that promise. You've made every day better than the last, every challenge easier, every joy sweeter. I love you more now than I did then, and I'll love you even more tomorrow." Zachary's vows were equally heartfelt. "You've been my partner, my best friend, my home. You've supported every dream, celebrated every success, and held me through every failure. I choose you today, just like I chose you 20 years ago, and I'll keep choosing you for every day we have left." Their children watched with tears in their eyes, seeing the example their parents had set. This was what marriage looked like. This was what love looked like. That evening, as the party wound down and their children took over entertaining the remaining guests, Yates and Zachary slipped away to sit by the water. 20 years, Zachary mused. "Remember when we were planning your wedding to Victoria?" "I try not to," Yates said with a laugh. "Though I'm grateful it happened. Without that disaster, I never would have met you. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd gone through with it? Not really. I think I would have figured it out eventually, but I'm grateful I figured it out when I did." He pulled her close. "Everything led to you. Every mistake, every detour, every moment of doubt, all of it brought me here to this dock with the most amazing woman I've ever known. You're getting sappy in your old age. I've always been sappy. You just bring it out of me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. The lake house held so many memories now. First kiss, proposal, wedding, anniversaries, family vacations. It was woven into the fabric of their love story. "What do you want for the next 20 years?" Zachary asked. "More of this. More time with you, with our kids, with the family we'll keep building. I want to watch Lily start her own business, see the twins figure out what they're passionate about, maybe meet some grandchildren," he smiled. "But mostly, I just want more mornings waking up beside you." "That sounds perfect. What about you? What do you want?" Zachary thought for a moment. "I want to keep doing what we're doing, creating things that matter, helping people celebrate love, making a difference, and doing it all with you. Deal." They sealed it with a kiss, the kind of kiss that still made Zachary's toes curl even after 2 decades together. As they walked back to the house, arms around each other, they could hear laughter spilling from the windows. Their family, the life they'd built, the love they'd chosen. It had started with a wedding that never happened, with Zachary walking into an office to plan a celebration for 2 people who weren't meant to be together. It had started with honesty and courage and the willingness to see the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. And it had blossomed into something neither of them could have planned or predicted. A love story that was messy and real and absolutely perfect. A partnership built on trust and respect, and the daily choice to keep showing up for each other. Years later, when people asked Zachary about how she and Yates met, she'd smile and say, "I was hired to plan his wedding, just not to me." And when they asked Yates, he'd wrap his arm around Zachary and say, "I thought I knew what I wanted. Then she walked into my life and showed me what I needed." Their story became legend in their circle. The wedding planner and the millionaire who almost made the biggest mistake of his life. It was a reminder that sometimes the best things happen when you have the courage to change course. When you choose authenticity over appearances, love over logic, truth over convenience. They grew old together, exactly as they'd promised. They watched their children build their own lives, start their own families. They became grandparents, spoiling their grandchildren with the same love and attention they'd given their own kids. The Foster Yates Foundation continued to thrive, now run by Lily with the same passion her parents had brought to it. Foster Events was handed over to one of Zachary's longtime employees, with Zachary staying on as a consultant, still ensuring that every couple they worked with was getting married for the right reasons. Yates and Zachary spent their golden years traveling, exploring the world they'd been too busy to see when they were building their careers and raising their family. But they always came back to the lake house, to the dock where everything had changed, to the place that held their history. On their 50th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they stood on that dock one more time. Their bodies were older, slower, but their love burned as bright as ever. 50 years, Zachary said, holding Yates's hand. "Can you believe it?" "With you, I believe anything is possible," still sappy. "Always sappy for you." They looked out over the water, the same view they'd seen hundreds of times before, but it never got old, just like their love never dimmed. "If you could go back," Yates asked, "to that day in my office when you came to plan my wedding, would you change anything?" Zachary thought about it. About all the complications, the ethical dilemmas, the risks they'd taken. About how easily it all could have gone wrong. "Not a single thing," she said firmly. "Every moment, every choice, every challenge brought us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." "Me too," Yates agreed. He raised his glass. "To 50 more years." "I don't think we have 50 more years," Zachary laughed. "Then to every moment we do have, and to spending them all with you." They kissed as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Their family cheered and someone started music playing. Soon they were all dancing, 3 generations celebrating love and family and the beautiful life that Zachary and Yates had built. It was a life neither of them had planned, neither had expected. But it was the life they'd chosen, day after day, year after year. A life built on honesty, trust, and the kind of love that only deepens with time. And as Zachary danced with her husband of 50 years, surrounded by the family they'd created and the love they'd nurtured, she knew with absolute certainty that walking into that office all those years ago to plan a wedding that never happened was the best thing she'd ever done. Because it hadn't just been a job, it had been destiny. It had been the beginning of everything. It had been the moment her real life started, and what a beautiful life it had been.